Goodlatte for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your holding this hearing, and I just want to say at the outset that unless we reform programs like the SNAP program and a number of other entitlement programs, there is going to be a shrinking supply of funds for all of these programs, given the fact that we now have $500 billion to $1 trillion annual deficits totaling a $20 trillion national debt. But Ms. Muth, I wanted to ask you a question about Texas. You mentioned that your state has shown interest in photo IDs on EBT cards. Massachusetts and Maine have implemented this option to certain levels of success. What have been some conversations around this option?
So during the last legislative session, we had a proposal, and there's continued interest. During the last session, it did not pass. I think one of the barriers is that there is a cost to implement that. There's a cost to have that photo ID on each of the cards. And so I think members of our legislature are watching very closely the experience in states that have implemented it. The other issue is that the retailer at the point of sale does not limit purchases to the individual that's pictured on the card. And so the impact of having the photo is more of a deterrent, a potential deterrent effect, which is also difficult to measure in that cost-benefit analysis of, is that something that we want to invest in Texas. But there does continue to be interest, and we are watching the experience of those states closely.
And you indicate in your testimony that Texas has implemented an identity verification process in the online application, but due to federal restrictions, the applicant has the option not to complete it. Can you elaborate on what federal restrictions are in place preventing states from seeking more complete online applications?
Absolutely. There's a provision that requires us to count an application as filed with the state with only the elements of name, address, and signature on that. And the thought behind that is that file date is when the benefits start for the individual if an eligibility decision is made. But when you're in an online environment, first of all, in Texas, we have a lot of people that have the same name, so it's very difficult to identify somebody by just name, address, and signature. So I think we would like to have that ability. There are, and the federal citation is there in the written testimony. I think there's a happy medium of you don't necessarily need people to complete every element on a lengthy application, but we could require additional elements that would help us make sure we validate identity, just like we do for an individual who applies for a bank loan. You ask questions based on third-party data sources to confirm the identity, because we're not seeing these people in our office. And so I think...
Let me ask a question, Ms. Dean, about this. So many states are now utilizing, in fact, a majority of states are utilizing online applications and over-the-phone initial interviews. Why are the states heading in this direction, and what has been the outcome as states have made their way to this model?
Two reasons. First is the technology is there, that it's workable and can help support states' business efforts. I don't think 10 years ago or 15 years ago the technology would have allowed states to take online apps the way that they are. And second, the recession really drove states to innovate, to find ways to do more work, given that so many more families were at their doors with less. And it's not just online applications, it's document imaging. So if all documents are scanned, that means that you don't just have to work with an office or a unique caseworker who's got your paper file. You can call, and wherever the available work resources in the state, your work can be diverted to them. So states are getting very innovative. I will just say on identity proofing, a back-end option to validate identity in order to reduce verification burdens on clients, I think is really interesting. In Texas and Florida, testing that is terrific.
Let me ask Ms. Cunningham. I understand the administrative efficiencies that can be obtained through the use of categorical eligibility. However, nearly 4 million people are eligible for SNAP through these policies that do not meet federal requirements. Are there ways in which we can retain these administrative efficiencies while more closely aligning these policies with federal requirements? And I'll ask Ms. Dean to respond to that as well as Ms. Cunningham.
I'll answer again that that's difficult to know without more data. right now, it's hard to determine whether we've struck the correct balance. So I will say that people who are actually receiving a benefit are meeting the certain benefit criteria set by the federal government. So people need to have low enough income to receive a benefit. However, if you're interested in looking at their resources, we need more information to know whether we're striking the right balance on that. What's interesting is that states have chosen a variety of options. Of the states that have chosen broad-based categorical eligibility programs, 5 of them do impose a resource limit. Of the states that aren't, 7 of those states actually don't count the value of all vehicles. So there is a lot of information out there. Be interesting to talk to states, find out why they made the choices they did, what administrative costs they avoided or incurred that way, and what their results were.
My time has expired, but let me just say that it's easy to make decisions when it's the federal government that has to come up with the resources to pay for it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.